What's good, everybody? Thanks again for tuning in to another episode of Over Quota. Please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review if you haven't already. Again, tell a colleague, tell a friend, tell a neighbor, tell anybody that's 6 feet away from you in line, whatever it might be, just so we can help grow this podcast because I really like doing it. And like always, the J. David Group, which is my company, is sponsoring this podcast. My company helps early stage and growth stage startups recruit top tier CROs and VPs of sales. Go to the jdavidgroup.com to learn more. Now, today's guest is Doug Bleszinski. He's the VP of North American Sales at Bambuser, which combines live stream shopping with e-commerce. Doug, welcome to Over Quota.
Great. I'm very excited to be here, Jay. I've been an avid listener of your podcast since you've come out earlier in the year, and a lot has changed in that last last 11 months since
It's
you've been
amazing.
it. And I thoroughly enjoy listening to it and actually be able to take a lot of the tidbits, both from the account executive standpoint as well as the executive standpoint, to try to think through kind of how to make myself better as well too. So thank you for having me on today.
Absolutely. And I want to thank you here. And I had mentioned you, I believe, in another episode as well, but just I want to thank you for being such a supporter, right? And just an avid listener, and the feedback that you gave me about the summary of what you thought of the sales leaders was spot on. And I see you as being no different from what I know about you. So I'm excited to have you.
Great. Appreciate it.
So let's just start with what I just sort of bumbled through at the end there, which is to try to give everybody a synopsis of Bambuser. Give us a sense of the value proposition and your role there actually at Bambuser.
Sure. So absolutely. And to provide a little context with myself, to kind of get into the Bambuser, I think will kind of also help if it's okay, is
Sure.
I've had the good fortune of working with a lot of top innovative, fast-paced companies that are actually changing the way their customers are either going to market or leveraging resources, right? Whether it's Salesforce embracing the cloud, Elasticsearch getting value out of data, Salsify, how do I do a digital transformation to be on the digital shelf? And now really with Bambuser, which is really the next generation of e-commerce. They actually helped pioneer the live video streaming back in 2007, initially led by journalists. And it's really a state-of-the-art platform that enables the future of mobile and live streaming. So we empower both brands and retailers the ability to engage real time with their customers for higher engagement rates, for maximizing their purchasing, as well as also maximizing their sales as well too. So we've really pivoted the company in the last 2 years to really focus on the live video shopping experience. And needless to say, with COVID happening and a lot of the retailers and the malls, going down, it's been absolutely explosive growth. Really, the innovative thought leader brands and retailers have really started to think of how do I engage my customers, leverage technology to do so, and then leverage that experience so that they can build relationships with their customers.
That's absolutely incredible. I have to ask a curiosity follow-up question there, which is give me a use case, an example of how that actually works. If I'm now, let's say we hang up and I'm going to do some online shopping at one of the brands or retailers that you work with. What is my experience going to be look like? And then what's the benefit going to be for me and for the ultimate, the retail that
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
purchasing?
absolutely. We've done it across a lot of different industries, everything from health and beauty to fashion to electronics to furniture. An example is one of them is a very large, which everyone would know, a beauty fashion organization. Obviously, COVID hit. They then looked at, okay, how do I make sure that we normally sell through Sephora and Ultra and other kind of retailers? They also want to be able to work directly with their consumers on their website as well too. So how do they actually work with that and engage your customers? So what they did was they actually said, well, look at in essence a live video shopping on our website, so that our customers can come to our website. We'll have higher engagements. We'll know the customers in that standpoint. We then actually then at this point hired an individual to be I'll call it the shopping expert, if you will, to be able to show their products. And on the live video streaming, you'll see the products right there. You'll be able to look at the products, be able to then add to cart for those particular products.
Hmm.
There's also a chat engagement standpoint. It's white labeled, so in this case, they can click it and have a makeup like symbol that pops up in that point of view. And they saw dramatic increases over a quarter standpoint, where they started leveraging live video shopping, where they actually increased their digital presence by over 60% quarter over quarter. And it wasn't just live video streaming, but it really helped with that engagement level for that. There's also been a number of use cases with regards to a high luxury apparel company that actually looked at their largest customers and then engaged them to say, hey, we're going to actually have an individual celebrity walk through their best aspects of the brand that they have, and then they can engage and look through it that way. So there's multiple ways that our customers, both on brands and retailers, have been able to use that to be able to drive traffic, drive engagements, and then have a direct relationship with the customer as well.
Amazing. That is really, really cool. Tell me more about your role there at Bambuser, and why they hired you at this particular moment in time.
Yeah, so Bambuser's really grown dramatically within the last 12 months. Once we really started to pivot it to brands and retailers with a live shopping experience, and we really noticed that our CEO Miriam noticed that the trend really kind of starting off in China. 4 years ago, the live shopping was virtually zero. Now represents over 12 to 15% of total e-commerce sales are done via live shopping. And it's not just the initial experience; it's then you're able to take, edit, and cut it, and take different aspects of that, and then share that via social media, via on your website, via your partners as well too, to be able to drive further conversion rates on that as well too. So as they continue to grow, the company is headquartered in Sweden. It's led by individuals who have tremendous amount of experience in live video shopping and engaging both retailers and brands. And we started to really, really grow dramatically. And as we continue to grow, the thought is, okay, how are we going to support a lot of the different markets? Specifically, we have Europe because we're located in Sweden. But now, what are we going to do with the United States, supporting that, building go-to-market strategy for that? So they hired a colleague of mine to help run the client services section of it, to make sure our customers are onboarded, are supported, and get the level of support to drive their success and engagement. And then they've hired myself to help build a go-to-market team with regards to sales engagements. How do we work with our customers? How do we then become, do a land and expand standpoint with our customers, and they continue to grow? So I've been hired to help with the North America marketplace, which is our largest marketplace, and then develop the team to help support that and drive opportunities and revenue for this marketplace.
What did the go-to-market in North America look like up until they brought you on board?
Yeah, up until now, it's been supported by our team in Sweden and our executive team. So the North America team itself is virtually brand new. So I'm the first sales individual in North America that's located in North America.
So tell me about that. You're now then building the go-to-market team in North America. What are the components, the functions that you need on the go-to-market team, and then how do you go about thinking about building it in terms of sales process and choosing the right people and all that?
Yeah, without a doubt. So one of the big things that that I'm a firm believer in is working cross-functionally very well. So it's not a long standpoint where I can take a typical, kind of a SaaS sales methodology and say, hey, here's what we're going to do. Let's just, go it this way. It's really understanding kind of, I've got colleagues that run EMEA, I've got colleagues that run APAC and other regions in that standpoint. So how do we work collaboratively, and how do we think through what is best for Bambuser, right? To engage our customers along that customer journey, build a process that makes sense, and make sure that that sales process aligns with our customer journey, the way that we're going to go to market for it. Now, our platform does very, very well, both from an enterprise standpoint as well as kind of a smaller SMB standpoint. But what we have a lot of large customers that really need multi-language, scalability, things of that ilk that we're able to do very, very well. And we've already landed a number of the large brands and retailers in that section. So what is our sales process to kind of move them along? How do I coordinate with the different teams? So we're currently building, and we're currently in the process of rolling out kind of a global CRM process. And stabilize kind of, okay, here's what our go-to-market strategy is globally, not just North America. How do we make sure when we're forecasting and talking about our customers, we're understanding why they're changing, why they're doing it now, why Bambuser, what is the validation aspects to prove out to that point of view, and that we're consistent, globally with regards to how we're doing that. So it's really not just a North America go-to-market strategy. It's a global approach of how we're going to do it, and to make sure that that I try to help work very well with my constituents, both on the sales side, the product side, the marketing side, the executive team side, as we continue to grow.
And then how do you know where to begin? In other words, if you're, let's say, hiring for that enterprise team that you just mentioned, how do you know what the right profile is, and how do you know that right profile maps well towards what you just described at a high level, which is the sales process that you're putting in, not just in North America, but globally.
Yeah, it's a great question. In fact, I number of times see a habit of individuals. I do believe in the fact of, people want to work with managers and teams that they've worked with in the past in some standpoint, but I also believe in being comfortably uncomfortable, right? You need to be able to get new individuals, but broader individuals, some individuals that actually can challenge you as well too in that process. In some cases, like at Salesforce and then Elastic, completely different sales process. Instead of a line of business going down, it's a bottom up approach with Elasticsearch. So the qualifications, the aspects are different, right? That said, when we look at kind of the culture with Bambuser and what we're looking to do, we're engaging individuals who are thought leaders, who are part of e-commerce, who are running brands, who are thinking about, kind of the next generation standpoint. So with that, we kind of looked at kind of three main areas that we thought were kind of important when evaluating candidates. Number one was we kind of looked at it, we call it emotional quota or EQ, right? Now with EQ, I know it's around self-awareness, motivation, empathy, but so it's around that aspect of can they fit in culturally? Do they have self-awareness of it? In addition to that, are they very passionate, right? Are they passionate about kind of their business and what they're trying to do? Are they a learner, right? Are they trying to really be better themselves? So we really make sure that we look at EQ, not just from a standpoint of self-realization, but also culture fit within that standpoint. The second thing we're looking at is really kind of could be industry knowledge or the ability for them to really understand the problem we're solving and why it's really, really cool, right? Brands and retailers are struggling at times to be able to engage their customers, have that relationship with them, right? This is a real aspect that we help solve, right? Both as a, tactical as well as a strategic standpoint. Are they passionate about that? Do they understand why this is important and really what the problems are that we're trying to solve? So we really kind of, we dig it deep into that aspect. The third aspect that we get into is what's their ability to make sure that they can drive revenue, right? Are they an individual that has worked complex opportunities in the past? Are they an individual that is kind of a self-starter? Are they an individual that knows how to manage cross-functionally as well as the customer's cross-functional items, right? Because this is not something that a customer has already bought 4 or 5 times, right? They're not saying, hey, I already know live video shopping. I've already bought it 6 times. Okay, let me this. A lot of times it's new, it's innovative. So you've got to actually help them think differently and walk them through. And they don't know what, in some cases, what that process may or may not be and how they're going to be successful for that, right? So to be able to have those abilities where they've carried a quota in the past, where they understand how to be empathetic and lead them along the standpoint. So are they leading that customer journey, or is the customer leading them in that standpoint? And we're really looking for individuals that can lead our customers and provide empathy as well as provide, thought process and leadership in that process. So those tend to be the 3 things. And then what we do internally is make sure that they've talked to North America teams, our executive team, our cross-functional team, and then actually they present to us as part of the interview process so that we understand what they're really like in that process, the discovery process, and how we go forward from there.
You mentioned during our pre-interview 6 stages of the sales process that you like or that you're implementing. Talk to me a little bit about that.
So I want to make sure in general with the sales process, and I know Salesforce has 8 stages, you can have 6 stages, right? And I'm not religious with the standpoint of saying, no, it's got to be this, or religious on a methodologies, whether it's MEDDIC or gap selling or so forth, right?
Mm-hmm.
I believe that different methodologies in sales process can be different for what you're selling and what your go-to-market strategy is and how you're going to do that, right? So it can't be a square peg in a round hole. That said, I do believe that in general, the things that you need to understand is the first thing you need to understand is why change? Why does the customer need to change in that first phase, right? So if you don't understand why they have to changing, and they might have to change in this case because the malls are closed, because they're concerned about the foot traffic that are going to go in there. They're concerned about their market share, right? They're concerned about kind of how they're thought of as being innovative stuff. So aspects of why change, right? And then in the standpoint of why now, because right now in the COVID standpoint, there's less traffic. So they need to do something for the Christmas season or for the spring catalog or something else to understand the why now. And then we're looking at kind of why Bambuser. Like what's unique with our standpoint, and we need to take an honest look at it. It's not just us telling them why we're great. We need to understand kind of why they have to change, why they're doing it now, what the real requirements are, kind of how we go through that stuff, and then we actually then need to walk through how do we prove that out to them in a way that's meaningful, right? Whether that is a proof of concept standpoint, whether it's a a detailed technical discussions. What are the aspects that the customer needs to understand to really understand to prove out the standpoint that they'll get value, like where they are in that journey. And then we kind of go through the standpoint of, okay, now what does the commercial terms look like? And how do we make sure that it's commercially viable for both Bambuser as well as our customer in a meaningful way? That's not just a one-time transaction, but also they can see where this investment can go in the future, right? And it's not just, hey, we're just gonna keep on paying more. No, where's the value that the customer is getting in that standpoint? With that. So by thinking through that entire process and then mapping that process, understanding that process, to all of our opportunities, gives us the ability to be better coaches, better guidance, better strategic aspects with our customers to help them understand as well too the justification and then where they're going to get the value out of the technology as well.
Break down for me the unique challenge, the unique challenge of someone in your position where you're now tasked with building the North America go-to-market team. How do you stratify the territories in their comp plans, essentially, which goes to quota? Like, how does that all work, and how do you think through all of that?
Yeah, you're very much so, because in some cases where you're a seasoned organization where you've gone through 6 or 7 years and kind of exactly what the reps will do and they'll produce, then it's a standpoint of you kind of think through that, right? We still believe in making sure, I'm very familiar with kind of what the comp plan is for commercial individuals, enterprise standpoint, try to make something that that kind of aligns with what the market also bears in that point of view. To make sure that and the different aspects from the comp plan, from base to variable, to equity aspects as well too, to kind of get them ramped up. As part of thinking through kind of what the territory is, especially when we're the phase we're in, I'm also a believer in kind of working together with the account executive to think through what's going to put them in the best position to succeed, right? So what I mean by that is, instead of walking in and saying, hey, here are 20 accounts, this is what you have, go get it, and that's your quota, and let's go do it. It's a standpoint of saying, hey, the objective is, and based upon what our goals are, the quota is going to be. And we go through the numbers, we go through kind of what the plan is going to be. If an individual is at XYZ comp, they're going to have to produce XYZ revenue to be able to justify that, right? So you can't pay somebody $100,000 and give them $100,000, quota that doesn't align to it, right? So there's aspects where you start looking at, some of the formulas, behind the scenes, as far as, okay, how do I align that? But also you want to then be able to put the person in a position where they can, be successful, right? That they can try to work hard. As far as the initial setup here, it's a standpoint of the reps kind of looking at, okay, what accounts should we target? Let's collaborate. Let's look at kind of the best verticals that we know we're going to go after. Let's look at which ones you want to own, which ones your peers want to own. Let's prioritize those standpoint, right? Be able to have selections of those accounts, right? So there's an onus on the account executive to feel like, hey, I help create my territory, right? I own it, right? And we can also do that via what contacts have you have? What industry expertise do you have? Do you already have connections in some of these accounts that makes it quicker, better, faster for both Bambuser and the account executive to get up and running in that point of view? So we look at that. And an enterprise standpoint, we then look at, as an enterprise standpoint, you really can't do, you have 200 accounts and do it thoughtfully and really work with 200 accounts, right? So we kind of look at what the number is that kind of makes sense. Depending upon the size of the organization, the transaction standpoint, the land and expand, it can kind of vary, and we'll kind of, play with that number as we grow. But that's the way we kind of think through, saying, okay, here's what we believe an enterprise rep in the market is. Here's what history believes what our numbers are. Here's what kind of makes sense for that. Let's have the onus on the AE to work with the executive team to pick those accounts. Let's make sure I'm aligned globally with my peers as far as, what those accounts mean and what we're thoughtfully doing that. And then every week and every discussion is along the standpoint of what have we done in those accounts? What net new discussions? How can we be better? What engagements do we have? And if we're not having any discussion with those particular accounts, then maybe that AE is not the right individual for that account. Maybe there can be something better in that standpoint. So we can, look to change that. So that the AE and the executive team are working in collaboration with regards to how we're going to drive revenue.
A couple of follow-up questions there. Trying to think which one I want to go with first. Let me go with the last point that you just made there before I forget to follow up on it, which is, how do you know in that case whether or not it's the AE that is challenged, or whether or not it's the strategy that needs some adjustment? or do you know? And how much data do you need to know before you know what to do to change it, I guess?
Yeah. I believe in obviously looking at the data as far, and even with the CRM, seeing what around, what outbound aspects they have to it, right? But also for me, it's a lot of times it's a thought process. What is the AE doing to manage and thinking through that stuff, right? Are they pivoting? In the type of organizations that like Bambuser is, it's not just an account executive, just hey, I got to close the deal, which is critical, but also we're building a business, right? Maybe we can change our messaging. Maybe something else is resonating, right? Are they thinking of things differently? Are they in our product, thinking of our product, using our product, right? Doing things that are kind of helping at least a path forward, right? So clearly we're still results oriented, we're sales oriented, we still look at results, but I'm also a big believer in the process, and the process eventually will win out over any kind of short-term aspects in that standpoint. So it's normally a continuous discussion with regards to what's working, what's not working, what was the engagement, how was the engagement. I look along the peers. I then also make sure that the AE's peers, that they have their own discussion without me as well too, to find out, hey, what's working, how can we share, hey, I've got response and open rates with these type of things, and here's what I have found kind of useful in that standpoint, to kind of think through that stuff. And you can tell with the an account executive and a leader, if they're thinking and using and pivoting that stuff, they're coachable, they're thinking through it, they're applying it, then that eventually will be fruitful in the way they're going to go. If they're still doing the same thing over, the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results in that standpoint and not making the change and the adjustments for it, then that's a standpoint, and the results aren't there, then it's a standpoint of, okay, we've got to then have a different discussion with regards to how do we either change that, or maybe this is not the right environment for you.
And I would imagine when you're looking at the overall sales process, and ultimately moving towards that process, or through that process, there needs to be small wins along the way, right? So that you can say, okay, we are moving in the right direction. How do you define now, I guess, how are you defining those small wins? Is it something as, like you mentioned, messaging and open rates? Could it be something as simple as, the last week we were getting on this email that we were sending a 5% open rate, and now we're getting a 15% open rate? Like, talk to me a little bit about what that looks like.
Yeah. So there are plenty of different metrics for it. Clearly, I'm looking at, what are the number of meetings that we're setting up? What's the engagement rate for those particular meetings? How many meetings are leading to second or into a third meetings in that particular standpoint? What is the aspect of the pipeline looking along? Are able to take some marketing and some sales qualified leads and kind of start to move them along in that process? In the discussion, as far as target accounts, if we have a target account and we're trying to go through it, how many discussions have we had within that account, or how many either open rates and or engagements have we had for them? Are we seeing more activity because we're doing some targeted discussions with a large brand, that all of a sudden on our website we see more traffic and more leads from that stuff, right? So okay, then we're looking at kind of those metrics as well. I'm also looking to have the discussion with the reps as far as what are some of the unique aspects, maybe with the brand or a retailer they're working with, that's unique for them. Like, are they doing a new release? Are they doing something that's in the springtime catalog, right? Are there individuals that we can reach out to and have discussions with, right? So it's not just like things like, hey, open rates or just a number of meetings. It's the overall kind of activity standpoint, right? That leads to, fundamentally, are they starting the engagement? Are they doing more of the engagement? Are they thinking differently in that pivot? So that I can help. Actually, what my job is real. I'm hiring individuals that know how to do sales, right, and know how to be able to do stuff. My job is to actually enable them, empower them, right, remove the barriers for them, right, be able to provide them coaching and guidance of where they can, move the pivot a little bit and get better engagement, and where they can leverage better resources internally.
Does that also mean that you're going to need to hire a sales operations manager, or are you going to be the sales ops manager indefinitely until? How does that work? How is that going to work?
Yeah, fair question. So as we continue to grow, and we've grown dramatically from 20 plus employees to close to, I think on LinkedIn we're at 91 plus some contractors over there within the last 11 months. So we've grown dramatically, and as we've grown, we're then looking at obviously different roles and different aspects of that. We have individuals internally right now that actually help with some of the sales operation point of view. With sales operations, you want to make sure it's a global function. So it's not a sales operations for a region. That's you've got to have consistency across the board, right? So as you're talking to the board, as Miriam runs the organization, you need to be able to make sure, hey, here's how I view the business, overall, and what those processes are associated with that. So as we go through that, we have currently have leveraged some external resources from a consulting point of view. We have some internal resources for it, and now we're currently going through a process of starting to implement some CRM. So that we can, solidify that sales process and start getting the metrics that we have to be able to have, real-time forecasting discussions.
How do you mentioned collaborating with your colleagues overseas, and of course you need Miriam's and the board and other members of the executive teams buy-in on various initiatives that you want to get through. How do you do that? How do you sell internally, I guess, if you will? What is that communication like? And when you really feel strongly about something, how do you make sure that you're getting buy-in from everybody and ultimately getting what's best for the business?
Yeah, a couple things. First of all, our executive team is extremely collaborative and is very, they're great with the technology, but they're also uber focused on the front end of the business. They are absolutely fantastic. They know this industry cold. They're fantastic with customers. They understand kind of what the engagement looks to do that. And also right now is the time with live video shopping where we can kind of make sure we own that market. So that's been very, very great to work, cross-functionally in that standpoint with my cross-functional constituents, which is great because there's also a diversity standpoint, different backgrounds, which I think is very helpful, and different thought processes, which I think is extremely collaborative to be able to then, discuss with the different colleagues along the lines of, okay, here's what we're thinking. Like at the end of the day, we're trying to grow revenue. Here are the things we're trying to measure, right? So we're trying to measure things like activity, right? But we also need to understand kind of the why change, why now standpoint. Like, what does that mean within the context of these other marketplaces, right? In addition to that, what we don't want to do is all of a sudden do a complete change of the entire process, complete change of everything, and then shove down a whole new aspect to all the existing sales reps who have been successful, and all of a sudden they're challenged with regards to the learning curve, right? So how do we think through that incrementally and culturally to be able to do that? And the way we've done that is we've set up some cross-functional teams internally, kind of the CRM team, which is cross-functionally. We've laid out a schedule with regards to what we're doing on that. Then our team is then also work cross-functionally internally, both with my peers as well as our executive team, to think through what are the challenges, what could actually work, where are the small wins in this process. So how can we do a crawl, walk, run mentality while we're still, focused on revenue. And what I love too, and what I really love about Bambuser is I really love the diversity standpoint, right? So this is a company that is, that's born in Sweden, right? So they already have, multi, country thought processes, right? So it's not just a company that's kind of American oriented saying, well, just do the American way and just ship stuff overseas, right? The aspect, the thought process, the diversity of the executive team that we have, that's one of the things that actually appealed to me, especially having 3 daughters and having a lot of female leaders within Bambuser, to be able to embrace that, to do that. So that's how we've kind of worked cross-functionally to be able to get thinking through the incremental wins while we still making sure that we're engaged with our customers and closing revenue as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I was going to ask you, and so obviously you mentioned the diversity of the team and in the leadership. What were some of the other aspects of Bambuser that appealed to you? As obviously you had other options and certainly things to think about. What was excited you enough to say, yep, this is where I want to hitch my wagon to for the
Yeah.
next period
So
of time?
I kind of mentioned the reason I mentioned my background because it then aligns with why Bambuser, right? My background is I've worked with innovative companies that are changing fundamentally the way that their customers are going to market with it. I tend to love actually helping build it. Normally, I'm happily married with 3 wonderful daughters. My eldest daughter is a senior in high school right now. I tend to come in normally not where it's 2 people in a garage with an idea trying to think through it a little bit, right? It's normally where you've already have landed a couple of large either enterprise accounts or valuability. Usually, in the context of series, usually a series B or later, standpoint, where then you're looking at how do I do the acceleration, the growth aspect for that. There's a lot of great technologies out there. There's a lot of great leaders of companies out there. What really attracted me to Bambuser was the fact of their growth rate has been absolutely tremendous, right? The momentum they have, the types of brands and retailers they've been able to work with are second to none when you look at the growth rate for it. I really love the diversity aspect of it as well too, meaning they're really thinking through thoughtfully about the business, right? I then also looked at the problem they're solving. I can relate to the problem, but I also, my daughters relate to it, right? When I even had the discussion, I shared with my daughters, hey, live video shopping. And then my daughter was like, Dad, that's awesome. All of a sudden I turned from a security individual and so all of a sudden I was cool, right?
Right.
Hey, that's really awesome, Dad. I remember seeing Amelia Clark, and that was really cool. And we love Monique, and so to be able to have those type of things as well, and kind of the passion in it as well too. Those are the things. And then obviously from a funding standpoint, Bambuser Public had additional funding, so the ability to make those investments for me was really key.
Did they say you were cool or the company was cool?
It was cool. I don't know if my daughters ever think that I'm.
Yeah, that's my question. My kids are 7 and 5, so I think I'm still pulling the wool over their eyes, at least for a couple more years anyways.
My kids laugh when I try to do these dad jokes. So every joke that I have is a dad joke. So I still haven't got to the cool level.
Yeah, exactly. Let me go back really quickly and ask you something about, we talked about managing up and getting buy-in from your colleagues and from the executive team and all that, but then also you alluded to the fact that you don't want to necessarily just rip and replace, right? And then disrupt the people that are the existing sales team, because that can never go well as well. And you talked about crawl, walk, and run. How do you communicate to them, right? So here you come, Doug Bleszinski is coming in from the outside now with his own sort of views and standpoints and all of that stuff. Oftentimes when there's change, I know because I talk to a lot of people where there's, they get nervous and, they don't know what the viability of their own jobs are and all that. And I'm sure when you're coming in, you don't want necessarily everybody to just sort of jump ship and now you're left with the cupboard bare. So how do you do that, make that transition in a way that is good for everybody? Yeah, I'll just leave it there.
Very fair question. Now there are kind of two sides to it. From a North America side, I'm building my team from ground up, right? So that aspect of change, they're gonna, I already know what their sense of change is beforehand. The bigger thing for me, and that I've really been focused on, is what I talked about cross communication, functionally, is I need to understand the business better, understand the culture aspect of it, really understand kind of what has made Bambuser so successful, right? It's been wildly successful before I walk through, and it'd be wildly successful whether I'm, whether I walked into the front door or not. I believe I can make a big impact on that, but I need to be able to first understand kind of what the bones are that's made it successful. What are the aspects that have really driven the engagements and the happy customers to continue to grow with us, and in that point of view. We've got some really great, sales leadership and sales team that's already in place, right? Those individuals who have been very successful is to take a step back, and that's where we then had the cross-functional discussions as far as if we are going to implement the new sales process, kind of the why change, why now, why Bambuser, and so forth. How does it fit within the context of our current process? Like, what are the, what's the aspect of the profile of the reps that we have today, and what are the profile of the reps we're going to look for in the future, right? And then how can we kind of start thinking through incrementally, how do we make these small changes, right? So how do we make sure that the adoption rate of our CRM is going to be higher, right? How do we make sure that not only adoption rate, but what's the value to the rep, right? Like, because in some, you've got to sell this back to the reps as well too. Like, what's the value for them? How do they see value, right? If they're going to be able to see value and be able to make sure that the individuals have opened their emails, be able to have more data in there, be able to have a cleaner territory, right? Be able to make sure the forecast calls are quicker, better, faster, more meaningful for them, right? Be able to have better coaching and better individuals that can help with a deal when they see the items within the CRM standpoint, right? To think through what are the value props within the existing team, how would we go about doing that, and what's the readiness for change, right? And how much change could happen out of the initial get-go, right? So that's why, initially we're kind of doing the crawl, walk, run to start off initially with sales. Then we'll look at client services. Then we'll look at marketing, and we'll kind of look at the different aspects of cross-functionally in that process to start off with a kind of a crawl, walk, run. Look for those incremental wins, be able to share those success with those incremental wins of, hey, this is the value that we've had in that. And then also look at potentially other technologies that can then extend the value that we currently have today. So it's absolutely not coming in and rechanging the entire sales process, reformatting everything. It's really a collaborative discussion of thinking through what's meaningful, how do we apply it, what is it applied, what does it really mean in the standpoint, how much do we actually see the value, where can the AE see the value, and then how do we enable those AEs to see the value in this process as well.
One of the things I'm realizing more and more is the a sales leader's one of the a good sales leaders' value, or a way to measure the value, is their ability to recruit, right? And to bring on good people. I know that you've added, since you've been there, a couple of folks, and these were folks from your network. Is that right?
Correct. Yep. Yep.
Tell me about that. Tell me about, what are they looking at Doug Bleszinski and seeing and saying, you know what, like, we've worked with him in the past, we know of him, he's impacted our career in a way where we want to continue to work with him again. Talk to me about that relationship that you had with them and why you thought they'd join.
So when I look at, I've loved the organizations that I've worked with. I've loved Salesforce. I've loved Oracle. I've loved Elasticsearch. Beacom, obviously Bambuser, Salsify, as well as the customers and your cross-functional standpoints, right? That said, I still am a very big believer in your ecosystem of people you work with, right? You treat with level of integrity, you treat with a level of respect. That's not just internally as far as direct reports, but it's also cross-functionally. It's also individuals, your customers, your prospects, right? Because in our industry, typically you're not there for 15, 20 years anymore, right? You're typically looking at innovative companies and, maybe, 3 to 5, 6 years or so. And then you kind of look at, opportunities to grow and to do additional learning for that. I'm a big believer in making sure that you treat individuals right, learn where their career paths are. I've got a lot of individuals that I've made great contacts with that are in product, that are in marketing or in sales operations, that actually use them as a sounding board, where I'm looking at it saying, hey, I'm thinking through this from a sales operation point of view, right? I'm not as familiar with HubSpot or Marketo or Eloqua. Can you help me understand a little bit and, kind of be able to do that? The other thing that I also kind of believed early on, was, I mentioned my daughters, was, and I also love the fact of diversity, was I had the opportunity to bring my daughters up to meet female leaders at a number of my different companies, right? So they can actually think through, how did they get to where they are, where the thought processes are, and kind of think through themselves about how they can apply that stuff, right? My daughters found it extremely valuable, especially looking at some of the heads of developers and what they did to get there, product managers, and it opened up the kind of the vision, if you will. So for me, when I look at, quote unquote, individuals I'm looking to bring in the business, it's because we built a relationship. It's because they can look at what I, do cross-functionally, and to think through kind of, hey, here's why I believe in it. I've been fortunate to be able to make very good decisions in the past with the companies that I've been at. Here's what my track record is. Here's what my due diligence is, right? And by the way, here's what the characteristics and the attributes that I believe that I've seen in you that could apply to the company that I'm currently at right now, right? And it's not just a, hey, you've done well for me here, let me bring you over and kind of slap in. And no, you got to thoughtfully think through kind of, maybe they're not right for that particular sales environment. Maybe they're not right for the culture. There's got to be ways to think through that stuff. So I constantly make sure that I proactively, John DeVagian, just reach out for my mentorship. Individuals like Dave Rernitsky in the past, the mentors, to think through things on those lines. I think it's kind of really important to help make sure that your brand and your ecosystem is there, and constantly make sure that you can kind of reach out and have those discussions, even with the venture capital, standpoint as well. I've got some VCs that I really trust and admire, that I kind of think through the business and to help me be a better leader as well. So I leverage that thought process to be myself a constant learner.
Yeah, that was interesting. I found that fascinating when you and I were talking before we recorded this about your network and how you lean on your network to make decisions within your own business. And it's the flip side of that is someone who might be too proud, so to speak. I was actually talking to someone it was a couple of days ago, and I was telling him candidly, I was looking for advice and insight from him, and I was saying I was hesitant to reach out because my thought process would have been like, Jay, you don't know this already? Like, I thought you knew this already. Like, what's wrong with you? And I was just honest about it. I'm like, hey, that's why I haven't reached out. But in that, it was just silly, and then to hear you, Doug, talk about how you're doing that as well. It gives me some relief and some comfort to know that that's how people are able to achieve success and then sustain success, is through their networks and the relationships, and being able to communicate and be open and vulnerable at times, to talk to people that they can learn from.
And that's key too. You mentioned because on the pivot to that, you have individuals who network with everybody, right? Just
Yeah.
do in spray and pray, right?
Right.
Which every time you hit a LinkedIn accept, and you're like, oh my lord, please don't have a sales call
Right.
like literally 2 seconds afterwards. Right? So
Right.
it's actually reaching out in a meaningful way, right?
Right.
To be able to say, hey, here's the things like hey, and it's also, is there anything I can do, right? There are great kind of executives that that I try to be mentors or shepherd with, right?
Mhm.
That still call me on a regular basis to even do things like, hey, I'm negotiating a comp plan for this other company in XYZ. What are your thoughts? Where do you think, hey, I'm thinking of this. And normally I'm looking through saying, beyond your skill sets, like, what do you want to do? Like, where do you like, are you making the right decisions for that stuff? And then also to try to be humble with myself, like with my network, is to just ask honest questions. I'm trying to build a commercial team, right? Here's what I'm trying to do. This is a new environment. We're doing this and this, right? How would I best go about doing that stuff, right? And also to be honest with yourself of where you do what I do very well and where you focus on. What aspects do you need to learn on and be better at, right? And how do you keep on adding into attributes like things that you continuously learn in that standpoint? So I do think the network is great, but it's network with a authenticity, right? And a real discussion, not just saying, hey, can you connect me with this person because I know them, and do it that way.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we're at the point in the interview where we I call it the rapid fire 5. I ask you 5 questions, you give me 5 answers. It gives us a little bit of a different angle to look at you and to learn more about you. Ready?
Yes.
All right. Actually, the first one is simple, which is, are you hiring and which positions are you hiring for? Let's get that one out of the way.
Yep. So the answer is yes. We're looking both from the enterprise point of view, the commercial point of view, as we build our business. Absolutely, the answer is yes to both those. We'll continue to grow. So right now we're looking to have somewhere of probably 2 more enterprise account executives, and then start looking at the commercial team. Those are likely kind of late Q1, Q2 hires. And then after that, we'll then look at other aspects for the go-to-market team, whether it's things along the lines of sales operations or marketing or lead gen or stuff like that. Those will be other aspects that we'll be looking at as we continue to grow this year.
Fantastic. What are you most excited about right now? Either, actually, I keep saying either personally or professionally. I'm going to say personally and professionally. How about that?
Personally, I'm looking to be able to go on vacation with my family. So, we had a big family vacation planned. My wife and I had an anniversary, 20 years.
Oh,
And
congratulations.
we were looking to go to one of the islands and do that with the family. That obviously with COVID got postponed.
Mm.
So now my kids are thinking through where's where can we go as a family standpoint. What I'm really looking forward for professionally right now is I'm really excited about kind of what we have here at Bambuser. And I'm really looking forward to really seeing kind of live video shopping be kind of a standard in the industry, right? So in the past, where all of a sudden you didn't have people that were running customer success, right? You didn't have individuals dedicated to e-commerce, right? I really believe they will actually be positions at brands and retailers that focus on live video shopping, right? So that's their role, is to help do that, to engage and to do that. And I'm excited because we're pioneering that, and pioneering kind of the way that brands and retailers can leverage that. So I'm pretty excited to see how that unfolds.
I'm actually excited to hop on Bambuser and take another look myself, to be honest with you, and share it with my wife as well. What do you want to get better at right now?
There's a lot of things I want to get better at. I'm constantly looking at different ways to improve. The thing that this was multiple things. I'm trying to
Give
make
me more than one.
yeah, yeah. I want to make sure that my communication is, I constantly work on my communication skills, right? And especially important now where a lot of it's done via video. You don't have the personal relationship of sitting down and breaking bread in that standpoint. So I'm constantly looking at ways to think through how can it be more, how can I, in essence, communicate but not over communicate with, in some standpoints, full communications. How do I do that in a way that I'm, connecting with individuals, both locally and globally? And what's the best way for me to kind of, think through that a little bit? The other thing I'm constantly looking at is what other skill sets can I be and should I be adding as a constant learner, right? So I'm constantly believing that I need to learn, I need to be better, right? And the reason why I love these innovative companies is you're learning new technology, learning different items, right? So what can I do to learn more things like around customer success? What can I do to learn more things like with marketing and demand gen, right? What can I learn more about, kind of that journey with our customer and the content that they need in that particular journey? So for me, it's really, looking at, okay, how can I add new aspects of growth, whether it's, customer success or marketing and technology and the customer journey, as well as making sure that I'm constantly working on kind of the communication skills and really making sure I'm aligning with, what my constituents need.
Awesome. What keeps you motivated?
Um, I'm in general a self-starter. I'm a believer that I know some folks say, "Hey, fate happens." I believe you kind of make your fate happen, right? If you sit back and wait for things to happen, it doesn't happen. If you look at the most successful individuals in the world, they kind of think through. They fail. You fail multiply, right? In fact, I would argue that you're not growing unless you fail, right? Everyone that's gone on a bat, and no one bats 1,000, right? So and by the way, it's really, really easy to be liked and to be wonderful when things are going great, right? But it's when things are going not so great, when things are really challenging, right? Where you see kind of the true colors of the individual, right? So for me, it's the kind of looking at those aspects to see how I can get better.
Can you share a piece of advice or tool that you use to help you stay productive?
Um, I am a big believer being at Salesforce. I'm a big believer in CRM. So I am a big believer in making sure that um, if it's not in your CRM, then how do you manage your business, right? And how do you make sure that conversations are better, more fruitful, and productive in that point of view? So I constantly look at things on the lines of tools like like a Salesforce or a HubSpot from a CRM perspective. I also constantly look at things on lines like a Zoom Info or Sales Intel with regards to how the individual, because people aren't in offices right now, right? They're remote and stuff, right? So I'm looking at technologies and ways that aren't spam, that because everyone's sending 8 gazillion emails. I must get 5,000 emails a day and 5,000 recruiters sending spam stuff with it, right? What are the technologies we can look at, things like buyer's intent, the journey, and things of that nature? So things, those type of technologies. I mentioned a few, as well as kind of productivity tools like SalesLoft, or things that for me that I tend to look at to be able to make us more productive, better, and be able to provide some metrics for the sales team to get better.
Spoken like a true sales leader, for sure. And one last question, I suppose, is how can folks follow up with you to thank you, to perhaps apply for those positions that you just alluded to?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm relatively active on LinkedIn. So it's Doug Bleszinski. There aren't too many Blezinskis on LinkedIn, so so you can find me there. I'm also on Twitter also at Doug Bleszinski, although not quite as active on Twitter. As well as if they want to email me, just dbleszinski@gmail.com is an easy way to get in touch. And it doesn't have to be in touch specifically for a job, but it could just be for, again, kind of a networking discussion with regards to thinking through maybe some things that they found pertinent on this discussion today.
And make sure you mention over quota so that you go to the top of his inbox, right? Put that in the subject line, over your over quota interview. This is getting scary, but I think I can almost spell your last name without looking. Let me see. Bleszinski. Is that right? Or
Correct. That is correct. Way back in the my grandmother at the time claimed that she changed it. There was another C, another Z, letters in there, right? And my wife, whose maiden name was McCaffrey, when she was looking to change it, was like, "Oh my God, that's so long." I'm like, "Hold on, like one letter left." No, it's Bleszinski.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love it. Doug Bleszinski, thank you for going over quota.
Great. Thank you, Jay. Appreciate it.
Goodbye, everybody. Cue in the music.